Alright, this is just a quick and greasy video to show you how to make a wingnut. What I've got here is a piece of 1/8 bar stock, and this is just a scrap piece. It's about 3/8 wide and 3 inches long. And what I'm going to do is make a wingnut out of this, and I'm going to take you along for the ride so you can see how to do it too. And it's really a simple process. I mean, it requires a fair bit of specialty tools and some redneck ingenuity, but it's fairly simple. All you're doing is just bending this piece of metal twice and then drilling a hole through it and tapping it, and that's it. And there's a lot of precision that you need and drill presses and stuff like that in order to get this nice and precise, and I'm not going to do any of that because I'm lazy, and I'm probably not going to need to use this thing that I'm making here, but I'm just doing it for insurance. I went out to my local hardware store to try and find an M6x1 wingnut to replace the wingnut on top of a 1985 Mercedes-Benz 300 CD turbo diesel, and for the life of me I couldn't find any nuts in there at all, any M6 nuts in there at all. Every other size of metric, but someone had come in there and cleaned them out of M6 and they never restocked them. And so I thought of this entire process as I was digging through every single metric fastener drawer trying to find one, but I did eventually find one, and I'm going to use that. But since I already thought of this and I'm now curious to see if it'll actually work, I'm going to try and make it. And if you're seeing this video, that means that it worked, or something so hilarious and catastrophic happened that I'm putting it up on YouTube anyway. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so the first step is you need to get a piece of metal, and this is a little too long. I guess I can just sort of make up some rough proportional dimensions for you, just so that you have something to work off of, and if you need to change it, because I have no idea what I'm doing. You want something that is half as thick as the hole that you are tapping, and then you need to mark out from the center of that piece twice the width of the hole you were tapping, and you want this thing to be 3 times the length of that area in the middle where you're bending, at the very least, if not 6. This one that I have right here is 6 times because it's about 3 inches long, and I have a 1/2 inch marked out there in the middle, and I've already gone ahead and scribed it. I just scribed out the center, and then I marked a 1/4 inch on either side because I'm drilling a 6mm, or I'm tapping a 6mm hole, and 6mm is basically 1/4 inch for the imprecise stuff that we're doing. And I'm going to be drilling I think that this is like roughly 5mm. It's slightly larger than 3/16, which is what 5mm is, but the markings are totally worn off of this bit, so I actually don't know what size it is. But anyway, we're drilling that, and then we're tapping it. If you don't know what size you need, a good way to roughly estimate it is find the drill bit that when you lay it on top of it exposes the most threads and the least shaft of your tap, and that's the one you want to go with. If you have a 3-way tap like this, it works a lot better. If you have a 4-way tap or 4 flutes on your tap, it's a lot harder to try and guesstimate. You can just look the stuff up online as well, but this is what I'm using, which is vaguely 5mm, which is what I'm supposed to use for a 6mm tap. But anyway, let's get back to this. So half the thickness of the hole you're tapping, you want an area marked out in the middle that is twice the width of the hole you're tapping, and then you want your wings to be the same width as this area in the middle to about twice as long. And now that I have this all scribed out like that, and I scribed it and center punched it just with an old bent wood screw, the next step is we're going to stick it in the vise, and we're going to line it up on the upper one. We want the hole inside of the vise like that, and then I will torque this down off camera, and then we're going to bend it over. Alright, so as you can't see because there's no light, let me get a flashlight. I've got the upper scribe mark halfway out, and I've got this at a 45-degree angle, and we're just going to take a regular old standard hammer and just fold this over this way. I guess either way, doesn't really matter. And we're doing that so that we have a little wing on one side, and it's going to be a bit tricky to do the next side. Alright, so I bent it over, and as you see, because I put it at a 45-degree angle, it's bent at a 45-degree angle. Don't know if that's going to help us much, but we'll see. And I've got it clamped down again. The one little issue with this is working on something like that, you got to put it at the very, very corner in order to line it up again. And I'm just using a speed square to make sure I'm roughly 45 degrees because I don't really care that much. Plus it's going to move when I whack on it. And yeah, I've got it roughly where I want it again. I'm just going to smack the shit out of it and knock it out of the vise, so wish me luck. Alright, so here's the finished wing nut, and it is all warped as all fucking hell. So what we're going to do is stick in the vise like this. Come on. No. Stick in the vise like this. And then cinch it down and try and get this area up here as flat as we possibly can, or at least be mindful of how not flat it is. And then we're going to chuck this in the old drill and get to drilling our hole and then tap it. And then once we get all of this done, we are going to thread something into this and we are going to sand it flat so that we now have a flat mating surface that is at a right angle to the wing nut. I'm not certain how I'm going to get it to do that. Also, I'm not even certain I have an M6 bolt lying around, but that's what we're going to at least attempt to do. Also, I just learned if you crank really, really, really hard on your vise, it flattens it out. So that actually works perfectly because that's what I wanted it to do. And I was worried it was going to be a pain in the ass to do that. It actually got us a lot more flat too. So I'm just going to be mindful of how not level this is. Yeah, you see that? Yeah, nice, perfectly level. And I'm just going to start drilling holes. And I remember to use thread cutting oil. It'll extend the life of your bit by about like 6 million times. Now, what most people would tell you to do is you put your tap in the drill press, kick it up to high speed, and then shut it off, and then slam it down, and it'll drill. It'll start the tap nice and true, and then you can do it by hand. But I don't care. This is already super jank, so I'm just going to do what I always do and just start the thing by hand. And of course you want to use the proper tap. You want one that you can start a hole with. You don't want to go in here with a plug. So I'm going to get to tapping. Yeah, remember to use thread cutting oil. And we'll see how true it is, and hopefully I have a 6mm bolt lying around. Otherwise, I think I'm SOL because I don't have any metric dies. So wish me luck. Alright. We have her tapped. Just a little loose. Probably should have used just regular 3/16, but whatever. It's just a wing nut. It's not holding down anything structural. Well, at least not really. Yeah, lots of crap in there. Need to clean that up. And have not looked for a bolt yet. I know I have these guys, which are CV joint mounting bolts for my Jeep, but I'm yeah, they're 8mm. So we're going to ignore that I found these, and we're going to look for an M6 in this pile of junk machine screws that I have, and hopefully we do. I'm pretty sure there's one in there because I keep accidentally trying to screw it into things. We shall see. Literally the first bolt I pulled out of the drawer was an M6. So that works out. This is incredibly loose though, which is not great, so we're going to have to slather this with some stuff or throw a washer and a lock washer under it, but we do have a 6mm bolt, so that's nice. And there is our wing nut. Alright, so now that we have this proto wing nut, what I'm going to do is take this M6 bolt, thread it down in here, and I think I'm going to go grab one of the nuts I bought and stick it on here so that I can thread this just barely through so that it's poking out, and then have a double nut on top that I can cinch this down with, so that I can then take this and grab it with a pair of vice grips and take this whole assembly while holding onto the nut and keep everything square to the nut, and then put this down here on the belt sander and sand this flat and true to 90 degrees from that nut so that I have a nice flat mating surface on the bottom of this wing nut, so that when I cinch it down, these angled doohickeys underneath don't destroy everything. I think I'm going to just roughly sand it to begin with just to get the big stuff out, and then we'll try and true it up after that. Although I don't really care that much, but I'm gonna make an attempt. Well, I'm a bit heated because I opened my junk nut drawer and there's 2 wing nuts in here, and of course this one that I've tried many times to put on things and it never quite fit is M6x1 metric, because this threads right into it perfectly. So I'm a bit mad about that, that I went out and spent $1 on a Wingnut that I didn't need to. Hi, how are you doing? But yeah, we're going to use that to make another Wingnut, because that's just how life works sometimes. Alright, I found a different M6 nut, but if you couldn't understand my insane ramblings before, what I've done is I've gripped onto this bolt relatively square with a set of vice grips, and I've got the end of this bolt sticking out just about a half a thread, just so that it's sticking out the whole way around. And what I'm going to do is hold this flat and as level as I possibly can, as square 90 degrees to this belt sander as possible, and sand the bottom of this flat so that when I cinch this down on top of the air cleaner, it doesn't gouge and bend and tear everything up, because the end of the bolt is, or the end of the Wingnut is all cattywampus. So you don't want to have to listen to this thing run, so I'm going to do that and report back whether or not it worked. Alright, so there we are, and it's relatively square. We will thread this bolt back in through it to test it. About sucked my finger into the belt sander, so that was fun. PSA, don't wear gloves while using high-speed rotary devices like belt sanders and chop saws and stuff like that, or anything with open exposed pulleys, because you can get sucked into there and break fingers and lose stuff. So don't do that. All right, so let's see how we did. I'm going to thread this back in the other way, which is going to be difficult since I sanded off the bottom of it. And we're going to see how flush this is. So what I would like to see is practically no air gap underneath this hex head, except for here where there's no exposed metal. And that's pretty good there. And where's that flat? That's decent there. You can see that we're off a smidge, I think. I think we're pretty good. I'm going to torque on that with this 10 mil. Like that. Oh yeah, we still had plenty to go. Now we'll see how we're doing. That guy looks pretty flat to me. That guy looks pretty flat to me. There's a Wingnut. Bada bing, bada boom. So, that's not bad. For what, taking me like 10 minutes to make? Took all of these tools though. But, you know, you made a Wingnut. So yeah, hope this video helps. Bet it didn't. If you like this kind of trash, make sure to like, comment, and if you want to see more of it, make sure to subscribe, because otherwise you ain't going to see nothing. Till next time, Tom out.